We look at the last decade of the things we've broken and what's broken us, and we use that wreckage to measure our identity. Before you were ever formed, your days were already written down. God said, "This one I'm making on purpose." The validity of a life is not its perfection. It's established by its author.
Thanks for joining us on Life Journeys, a podcast about thriving through the worst pain that life brings. With global initiatives threatening big changes to our way of life, we're going to need to activate Jesus' words about mountain-moving faith. Words That Work is the ongoing series on Life Journeys that is rooted in releasing revelational words of faith that will work every time and with everyone. It's about moving the mountains that keep us from the presence and goodness of God. It's about defining our life purpose and identity through encountering Him until we have the power to move the obstacles that are destroying our liberty and hope.
There's a man I once knew, large, imposing, with a spiderweb tattooed across his face. Every morning he walked into work scowling, his whole bearing a warning sign. Don't look at me. Don't speak to me. His nickname was Bear, and it was easy to see why. But here is what I want you to notice. The way he looked on the outside was a precise reflection of who he believed himself to be on the inside. He had looked into the mirror of his past, the prison record, the failures, the hard roads, and he had made a terrible, common, almost universal mistake. He had let that mirror tell him who he was. We all do it. We look at the last decade of our lives, the failures, the fears, the things we've broken, and the things that have broken us, and we use that wreckage as a measuring stick for our identity. We define ourselves against the backdrop of our worst moments, and we come up tragically short every single time. But what if the mirror is lying? The ancient poet who wrote the 139th Psalm understood something that most of us spend our entire lives trying to grasp. He wrote it not as theology, but as wonder. Barely contained, barely expressible wonder. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain unto it. He is not speaking of distant abstract knowledge. He is speaking of the staggering, intimate, relentless awareness that God has of you. Every thought before you think it, every word before you speak it, every motive behind every gesture. Now, God knows when you get up in the middle of the night for a glass of water. He knows the particular texture of your frustration when something interrupts your concentration. He knows the love beneath your sharp word and the fear beneath your silence. The psalmist says, "He is acquainted with all your ways," a phrase that carries the posture of a devoted attendant who studies your habits not to judge them, but to serve you according to each need, each moment, each particular manner of your soul. He knows you exactly, not approximately, not generally, exactly. And here is where it gets almost too much to take in. Before your parents knew each other, before the doctor held you up in that delivery room, before any element of your body was ever formed, your days were already written down. Not as a casual footnote in some celestial ledger, but as a declaration. God looked into the fabric of time and said, this one I am making on purpose." The word the psalmist uses for how we are made, fearfully and wonderfully, is not a polite compliment. Fearfully means that the angels themselves are arrested at the sight of you, that heaven stands in a kind of holy astonishment at the reality of your existence. Wonderfully means to be set apart, distinguished, made marvelous by the hand of God. You are not a byproduct. You are not an accident of biology or a footnote in someone else's story. You are, in the language of eternity, astonishing. When the sun shines across the Milky Way and we feel our smallness, we have the whole thing backwards. The God whose throne is the universe and the earth, his footstool, took more care and wonder in constructing you than in hanging those stars. The heavens declare his glory, yes, but you were made in his image. There is no star in the sky for which he died. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking of Bear and his spiderweb tattoo. You're thinking of your own version, the things you carry on your face, or worse, in the hidden places where you don't let anyone see. You're thinking, this doesn't sound like me. This doesn't match the evidence. And I want to say something directly to that voice. God knew. He knew you would still be wrestling with the same corners of your carnality this late in the journey. He knew about the failures you haven't told anyone. He looked at all of it, and he still chose you. He factored in your failures before the foundations of the world were laid. He calls failing, fragile, fumbling human beings. He always has. The validity of a life is not its perfection. It is its author. You are not the pen. He is the one who holds it. But knowing who made you is only the beginning. There is also the question of where he is taking you. There's a moment recorded in John chapter 6 that I cannot get out of my mind. The disciples are in a boat on the Sea of Galilee. Night has fallen, the wind has come up against them, and they are straining at the oars, exhausted, terrified, making no progress. The text says they were in serious trouble. And then, at 3 a.m, they see a figure walking on the water toward them. They cry out, thinking it is a ghost. And here is what strikes me. Jesus was already there. He had been watching them the entire time. He saw that they were in serious trouble, and he came to them walking above the very thing that was trying to destroy them. And when he climbed into the boat, the wind stopped. And then, this is the detail I want you to hold on to. Immediately they arrived at their destination. Not eventually. Immediately. I have spent a great deal of my life straining at oars, fighting against the wind, trying to solve every problem on my own tool belt, wrestling through trials I was never meant to muscle through alone. And I have learned, slowly, painfully, at the cost of much unnecessary grief, that the storms in our lives are never actually about the storm. God is always after something deeper. The disciples were defining themselves by the storm they were in, not by the one who had sent them into it. Jesus sent them into that storm. He sends us into ours, not to drown us, not to punish us, but to bring us in the only way that our calloused, self-sufficient hearts will allow into a deeper encounter with a life that this world cannot give us and cannot take away. Because here is what I have come to understand. There is a life, capital L, that is entirely distinct from the small life we spend most of our days managing. Jesus called himself the bread of life. He said, "Unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you." People walked away when he said that. Of course they did. It made no earthly sense. It still makes no earthly sense. And that is precisely the point. The life that God has placed in you is not constructed from the material of this world. It does not rise and fall with your bank balance, your health report, your reputation, or your record. It is, in Paul's astonishing phrase, hidden with Christ in God, the creator of every galaxy and every direction of infinite space, taking up residence in the particular and irreplaceable vessel of you. Every human soul carries a thirst that this world cannot satisfy. We try to slake it with accomplishment, and it returns. We try entertainment, reputation, comfort, security, and all of it, eventually runs dry. because we were not made for this world. We are just passing through. The deep, unfulfilled longings of your heart are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that you are exactly what you were designed to be, a creature built for eternity, living temporarily in a world of sand. I am not speaking the language of positive thinking. This is not self-help dressed in religious vocabulary. The cross was not a motivational metaphor. I am speaking about the raw, tested, hard-won reality that comes on the other side of being genuinely broken. Not performance broken, not religious broken, but actually broken, until the shell of your self-sufficiency finally cracks open enough for the life within to come out. Paul wrote his most transcendent words about being seated in heavenly places from a sewage pit beneath the streets of Rome. John received the revelation on a prison island of exile. The word that came to John in that place was not endure. It was, come up here. God took the worst place and turned it into revelation. Every pain you carry is heaven's invitation to draw near. This is why I am no longer afraid of death. I am not dying. I am leaving. The grave is not a destination. It is a mile marker. When this body, this earth suit I am traveling in finally wears out, the real me does not also get thrown away. The you that was planned in the heart of God before the foundations of the world does not cease. It is finally unencumbered. It is clothed at last with what it was always meant to wear. And between here and there, every trial overcome, every moment of patience under fire, every act of love done in the dark, each one is being written into an eternal account. You are not just surviving. You are building. You are constructing the Christ-like character that will one day contain the glory. God is not making spoiled heirs who inherit great wealth without knowing its weight. He is making kings who have learned to reign first over themselves. So I want to say to the person whose boat doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, stop trusting more in your failures than in his success. Your failures are not the final word. They are not even the loudest word, though they can certainly sound that way at 3 a.m. when the wind is against you. The final word was spoken on a cross, confirmed in an empty tomb, and is being spoken still, right now, into the specific and unrepeatable substance of your life. I will in no wise cast out anyone who comes to me. That is not a policy. That is a person extending his hand above the water toward a terrified, exhausted, straining soul who has finally run out of other options and is ready, perhaps for the very first time, to let him into the boat. And when you do, you will arrive at your destination. Not eventually. Immediately.
You can unlock the presence of God in your life. There are revelation principles that remove the mountains, keeping us from joy, hope, peace, and purpose when our world gets turned upside down. Look for these words that work with Pastor Hardika as he shares what has helped him when life got hard. And don't forget to check out his book, The Fortress and the Firebrand, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thanks for listening to Life Journeys.
We look at the last decade of the things we've broken and what's broken us, and we use that wreckage to measure our identity. Before you were ever formed, your days were already written down. God said, "This one I'm making on purpose." The validity of a life is not its perfection. It's established by its author.